Subscribe to incredible detective stories and enjoy watching. I have never liked the smell of beeswax. It reminds me of funerals and old churches, places where silence is forced rather than earned. But as I stood in the grand foyer of the Blackwood Institute for Troubled Youth, that smell was the only thing greeting me. That, and the relentless drumming of rain against the stained glass. My name is Dr. Arthur Raines. I am 49 years old. I have spent 20 of those years listening to people lie to me. I was a forensic psychologist for the state before burnout took my marriage and my sleep, leaving me with a tremor in my left hand and a desperate need for a quieter life. Blackwood was supposed to be that quiet life, a private boarding school for boys with behavioral difficulties, tucked away in the foggy hills of the Pacific Northwest. It was isolated, expensive, and discreet. The headmaster, a man named Percival Vance, shook my hand with a grip that was too dry and too firm. He was a tall man, skeletal, with skin the color of old parchment. "We are grateful to have you, Doctor," Vance said. His voice echoed in the cavernous hall. The previous psychologist left rather abruptly. "The boys need stability." Abruptly, I asked. I was tired. The drive up the mountain had been 3 hours of switchbacks and vertigo. "Family emergency," Vance said. He didn't blink. "I've interviewed sociopaths who held eye contact better than he did. We pride ourselves on order here, Dr. Raines. Routine is the antidote to chaos. These boys come from broken places. We rebuild them." He led me to my quarters. A small, austere suite attached to the medical wing. It smelled of bleach and damp wool. Vance left me the keys and a heavy file on my desk. "The roster," he said. "Dinner is at 6. Do not be late." I locked the door. I unpacked my bag. 3 gray suits, a bottle of scotch I told myself I wouldn't open, and my notebooks. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the wind howl around the stone corners of the building. I felt a familiar heaviness in my chest. The feeling that I had made a mistake. I walked over to the desk to open the roster. I wanted to see the faces I would be analyzing come morning. But as I reached for the file, I stopped. Lying on top of the leather folder was an envelope. It wasn't there when Vance put the file down. I was sure of it. I had watched him place the roster on the empty wood. I had been in the room for 3 minutes. The door had been locked. The envelope was small, cream-colored, high quality. There was no stamp. No address, just my name written in a shaky, jagged script to Dr. Raines. I picked it up. The paper felt cold. I used my thumb to slit it open. Inside was a single sheet of lined notebook paper, torn from a spiral binding. The message was short. "Welcome to the graveyard, Doctor. They told you I killed myself. They're lying. Check the bell tower log for November 14th. P.S. Don't drink the water." It was signed Leo. I frowned. I put the letter down and opened the thick roster Vance had left. I flipped through the pages, scanning the names and photos of the 50 students currently enrolled. Adams, Bennett, Carver. There was no Leo. I went to the back of the file, where the inactive discharged records were kept. Nothing. I sat back, the letter in my hand. My pulse was steady, but my mind was racing. I was a rational man. I didn't believe in ghosts. Someone had slipped this onto the desk while my back was turned, which meant someone had a key. I poured a glass of tap water from the bathroom sink. I looked at it. It was slightly cloudy. I poured it down the drain and opened the scotch instead. The next morning, the breakfast hall was a sea of navy blue blazers and hushed conversations. The boys ate mechanically. There was no laughter, no shouting, just the clinking of silverware on china. It was unnatural. Boys that age should be kinetic energy wrapped in skin. These boys were statues. I sat at the staff table. Vance was at the head, reading a newspaper. Beside him was the matron, Mrs. Halloway, a woman who looked like she was carved from granite. "Who is Leo?" I asked. I didn't whisper. I said it clearly, watching the table. Mrs. Halloway dropped her fork. It clattered loudly against her plate. The sound seemed to freeze the entire room. For a second, the boys at the nearest table stopped chewing. Vance lowered his newspaper slowly. His eyes were cold behind his spectacles. "Leo," Vance repeated. "I believe you are mistaken, Doctor. We have no student named Leo. I received a note, I said, keeping my voice casual. It was signed Leo. A prank. I assume. A prank, Vance said. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. The boys enjoy testing the new staff. Ignored behavior extinguishes itself. Doctor, that is Psychology 101, isn't it? Who was he? I pressed. A former student. Mrs. Holloway was staring at her eggs. Her knuckles were white. Leo Vance, the headmaster said softly. My nephew. He died here a year ago. A tragic accident. He fell from the bell tower. He had a history of delusions. It seems one of the students is playing a cruel joke on you, using his memory. I will look into it. He went back to his paper. The conversation was over, but I saw the look on Mrs. Holloway's face. It wasn't anger, it was terror, and I saw the boys at the nearest table exchanging glances. They knew. I went to my office. I spent the morning conducting introductory sessions. The boys were polite, guarded, and rehearsed. They gave me stock answers. I feel fine, sir. Classes are good, sir. I am learning discipline, sir. It was like talking to robots. Then came the hour before lunch. My door knocked. A small boy, maybe 12 years old, shuffled in. His file said Julian Black. Diagnosis: generalized anxiety disorder, selective mutism. Julian sat in the chair staring at his shoes. He was twisting a rubber band around his wrist, over and over until the skin turned red. Hello, Julian, I said softly. I'm not here to punish you. I'm just here to listen. Silence. I like your shoes. I tried. Silence. I leaned back. Someone left a note in my room last night. Signed it Leo. Julian's head snapped up. His eyes were wide, intelligent, and terrified. He looked at the door, then back at me. He leaned forward, his voice a barely audible whisper. He's not gone, Julian said. Leo, he writes to us, Julian whispered. Under the doors, in our books. He tells us things. What things, Julian? Things he couldn't know, the boy said. Secrets. He told Miller about his dad's affair, before Miller's mom even knew. He told Mr. Henderson that his car brakes were cut before he drove down the mountain. He saved Mr. Henderson's life. My skin prickled. Julian, Leo is dead. Someone is writing those letters. Julian shook his head frantically. No, I saw him fall. I saw him hit the stones. He's dead. But he's still angry. Why is he angry? Julian stood up. He was shaking. Because he didn't fall. He was pushed. The boy ran out of the room before I could stop him. I was left alone in the silence of my office, the rain still hammering against the glass. I looked at the first letter again. Checked the bell tower log for November 14th. I had a job to do, and it wasn't therapy. The Blackwood Institute was built in the 1920s as a sanitarium. The architecture was designed to intimidate. Long corridors, high ceilings, shadows that stretched too far. Access to the bell tower was restricted. The heavy oak door at the base of the spiraling stairs was kept locked, the key held only by the headmaster and the custodian, a man named Mr. Gantry. Gantry was a man of few words and even fewer teeth. He spent his days sweeping leaves that would just fall again the next day. I found him in the boiler room, smoking a cigarette that smelled like burning rubber. Mr. Gantry, I said. He squinted at me through the smoke. Doctor, you shouldn't be down here. Liability. I need to see the maintenance logs, I said. For the bell tower, last November. Gantry laughed. It was a wet, hacking sound. Logs? We don't keep logs for the tower. Nobody goes up there. Not since the boy jumped. Vance said it was an accident. Vance says a lot of things. Gantry grunted. He stomped out the cigarette. Boy jumped. I cleaned it up. You ever clean up a boy off cobblestones, doctor? You don't forget it. The letter said to check the log, I said. Gantry froze. He turned slowly, his face pale beneath the grime. You got a letter. Wes, burn it, Gantry whispered. Don't read M. Just burn M. Why? Because they're cursed, Gantry said. He moved closer, his voice dropping. It ain't natural. I found one in my pocket last week. In my zip jacket pocket. I hadn't taken the jacket off all day. It told me where I lost my wedding ring 5 years ago. Said it was in the P-trap of the sink in the third-floor bathroom. I checked. It was there. He was trembling. This wasn't a prank to him. It was supernatural dread. Let me see the tower gantry. He hesitated, then pulled a heavy iron key ring from his belt. On your own head, doctor. I ain't going up there. The tower stairs were dusty. The air grew colder as I ascended. The stone steps were worn down in the center, centuries of footsteps. At the top, the bell hung silent, a massive bronze monster. The view from the open arches was dizzying. The forest stretched out like a dark ocean, the mist clinging to the treetops. I looked at the railing. It was waist-high stone, difficult to fall over accidentally. You had to climb it, or be lifted. I looked around the platform. Dust, bird droppings, and something else. In the corner, wedged between the stone blocks, was a small metal box. It looked like a circuit breaker box, rusted shut. I pried it open with my car keys. Inside there was a notebook, a simple black logbook. Bell tower maintenance. I flipped to November 14th of last year, the day Leo died. There was an entry. Away 11T14-2000 check gantry to 1140-2023 private access P. Vance. Headmaster Vance had been up here 30 minutes before the estimated time of death. I pocketed the notebook. As I turned to leave, a gust of wind blew through the archway. A piece of paper fluttered down from the rafters above the bell. It landed at my feet. Another letter. I picked it up. The ink was fresh. It wasn't wet, but it didn't look faded. He didn't come alone, doctor. He brought the accountant. They were arguing about the endowment fund. I heard them. That's why I had to die. Ask Mrs. Holloway about the scholarship money. Leo. I looked up at the rafters. Darkness. Pigeons cooed softly. There was no one there. I descended the stairs, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was impossible. Unless someone was living in the rafters, watching, writing. That evening I skipped dinner. I went to the administration wing. The offices were locked, but the lock on the filing room was a simple pin tumbler. I had learned a few things working with the police. A paperclip and 2 minutes of patience were all I needed. I found the financial records. Blackwood was a non-profit, funded by a massive endowment and hefty tuition fees. I looked for the scholarship fund. Leo Vance was listed as a full scholarship student, but looking at the ledger, the withdrawals for his tuition were being paid to a shell company, a Vance Educational Consulting. The headmaster was paying the tuition from the endowment into his own company, effectively laundering the school's money through his nephew's enrollment. It was fraud. Classic, boring, white-collar fraud. But was it worth killing for? Dr. Raines. The voice came from the doorway. I froze. I turned around. It wasn't Vance. It was Julian Black, the boy with the selective mutism. He was standing there in his pajamas, barefoot. Julian. I let out a breath. You shouldn't be here. Neither should you, he said. His voice was steady now. Clear. He told me you'd come here. Ooh. Leo. Julian. I walked over to him, kneeling so we were eye to eye. You're writing the letters, aren't you? You're trying to expose what happened. It's okay. You can tell me. Julian shook his head sadly. I can't write like him. Look. He held out a piece of paper. It was a math homework assignment. His handwriting was blocky, childish, messy. I pulled out the letter from my pocket. The script was elegant, jagged, sharp. The difference was undeniable. A graphologist would confirm it in seconds. They were not written by the same hand. Then who is doing it? I asked. The ghost, Julian said. He lives in the walls. There are no ghosts, Julian. They are at Blackwood, the boy said. Follow me. He turned and walked down the dark corridor. I followed him. We went past the dorms, past the library, to the old servants' quarters in the basement level, below the kitchens. It was a maze of unused rooms filled with broken furniture. Julian stopped at a wooden panel in the wall. He pushed on a knot in the wood. The panel clicked and swung open. A secret passage, not uncommon in buildings of this age, used for servants to move unseen. He's in there, Julian whispered. I took out my phone and turned on the flashlight. Stay here, Julian. I stepped into the darkness. The air was stale, dry. The passage was narrow, running between the walls of the main building. I saw pipes, wiring, and dust. And then I saw a light. About 50 feet in, the passage widened into a small crawl space. A single battery-powered lantern sat on a crate. There was a sleeping bag, a stack of books, and a wall covered in papers. I crept closer. The walls were plastered with financial documents, photos of staff members and timelines. It was an investigation board. Sitting on the sleeping bag, huddled over a piece of plywood serving as a desk, was a figure. A boy. He was thin, pale, his hair long and matted. He was writing furiously. He stopped as my light hit him. He turned. It wasn't a ghost. It was a boy. He looked about 16. "Leo?" I whispered. The boy laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. "Leo is dead, doctor. I'm just the one who remembers him." He stood up. He was taller than Julian, but emaciated. I recognized him from the roster photos I had studied. "Elias Thorne." "Elias," I said. "You're listed as withdrawn." 6 months ago. My parents withdrew me, Elias said. "Or so Vance thinks. I never left. I ran away the night they came for me. I've been here ever since. In the walls. Watching. Listening. Eating scraps from the kitchen." "You're the ghost," I said. "You're writing the letters." "Someone had to," Elias said. He picked up the pen. "Leo was my best friend. He found out about the money. He showed me the ledgers. He confronted his uncle. That night I followed them to the tower. I was scared. I hid on the stairs." Elias's voice trembled. "I saw Vance push him. I saw him do it. And then he and the accountant, they staged it. They laughed." "Why didn't you go to the police?" "Who would believe the troubled boy against the pillar of the community?" Elias spat. "Vance owns the local sheriff. I knew I had to break them first. I had to make them paranoid. I had to make them turn on each other. The letters, I realized. Psychological warfare. It's working." Elias smiled grimly. "Jantry is a wreck. Mrs. Holloway is popping pills. And Vance is getting sloppy. You need to come out, Elias. We can take this to the authorities now. I have the logbook. I have the financial records." "No." Elias backed away. "Not until he confesses. I need him to say it." Suddenly, the panel door behind me slammed shut. The click of a lock echoed in the cramped space. We were trapped. "He knows," Elias whispered, his eyes widening. "He knows we're here." I rushed to the panel, locked from the outside. I pounded on it. "Julian!" "Open the door. Julian isn't there." A voice came from the other side. It wasn't Julian. It was Headmaster Vance. "Decare. Rains." Vance's voice was calm, muffled by the wood. I suspected we had a stowaway. Food going missing. Strange noises. But I didn't think my new psychologist would be so gullible. "Let us out, Vance!" I shouted. "It's over." I saw the ledgers. "An unfortunate misunderstanding," Vance said. "The insulation in these old walls is highly flammable, doctor. Old wiring. A terrible tragedy. A fire in the basement. It will claim the whole wing." I smelled it then. Gasoline. He was pouring it under the door. "He's going to burn us," Elias said. He wasn't screaming, he sounded resigned. "No," I said. My mind snapped into focus. Panic was useless. I looked around the crawl space. "These passages, they connect the whole building." "Yes," Elias said. "But the exits are blocked." I checked. "Not all of them," I said. "The ventilation, where does that duct go?" I pointed to a rusted grate near the ceiling. "The laundry room," Elias said. "But it's too small for you." "It's not too small for you," I said. I grabbed a loose brick from the floor and smashed the grate. "Go. Get to the laundry room. Pull the fire alarm. Get the boys out." "I'm not leaving you," Elias said. "You are the witness." I grabbed him by the shoulders. "If you die, Leo dies with you. Go." I boosted him up. He scrambled into the metal duct. I could hear the swoosh of ignition on the other side of the wall. The heat was instant. Smoke began to curl under the door. I was trapped. I looked at the investigation board Elias had made. He had done all the work. All I had to do was survive. I took off my jacket and wrapped it around my face. The fire was roaring now, eating at the old timber of the wall. I moved deeper into the crawl space, away from the heat. I knew the layout of the building from the blueprints in the maintenance file. There was a cold chute, an old one, bricked up from the outside, but maybe accessible from within. I crawled. The smoke was thick, acrid. My eyes burned. I could hear the crackle of flames. I found the chute. It was a steep slide of iron. I didn't hesitate. I threw myself down it. I hit a pile of coal dust in the sub-basement. I coughed, gasping for air. The fire was above me. I was safe for the moment. I scrambled up the stairs to the main kitchen. The fire alarm was blaring now, a chaotic, beautiful sound. I burst out into the rain-soaked courtyard. The boys were streaming out of the building, herded by the staff. Fire trucks were already wailing in the distance. I saw Vance. He was standing by the gate, playing the role of the concerned leader. I walked up to him. I was covered in coal dust, my suit ruined, bleeding from a cut on my forehead. I must have looked like a demon rising from hell. Vance saw me. His composure shattered. His jaw dropped. "Doctor," he stammered. "It's over, Percival," I said. I didn't shout. I didn't have to. The police cars skidded to a halt. The sheriff jumped out. And then, from the crowd of boys, a figure emerged. Elias. He was holding the ledger. And he was holding a microphone, connected to the school's PA system, which he had hacked into days ago as part of his haunting. "Listen," Elias said. He pressed a button on a small tape recorder. Vance's voice boomed over the courtyard, amplified by the speakers on the poles. "The insulation in these old walls is highly flammable, Doctor. A fire in the basement. It will claim the whole wing." See, Elias had recorded him through the wall. Vance looked at the speaker, then at me, then at the sheriff. He ran. He didn't get far. Mr. Gantry, the custodian, stepped out from behind a pillar and tripped him. Vance sprawled into the mud. "That's for the boy." Gantry spat. The aftermath of a scandal is always quieter than the scandal itself. Vance was arrested. The investigation revealed the fraud, the murder, the cover-up. Mrs. Holloway turned state's evidence to save herself, confirming everything Elias had claimed. She admitted she knew about the ghost, but was too terrified of Vance to speak. The school was closed down. The boys were transferred to other facilities, hopefully better ones. I packed my bags 3 days later. The smell of smoke still lingered in the air. I walked out to my car. Elias was sitting on the hood. He had been placed in temporary foster care, but he had come back to say goodbye. He looked clean. He had cut his hair, so I said, "No more ghosts, no more ghosts," Elias said. "Just memories. You have a gift, Elias," I told him. "The way you profiled them. The way you used their own fears against them. You're a better detective than I am." Elias smiled. It was the first time I had seen a genuine smile on his face. "Maybe I'll look you up in a few years. Do you need a partner?" "Finish high school first," I said. I got in the car. As I started the engine, Elias handed me one last envelope. "What is this?" I asked. "Another clue." "No," he said. "Just a thank you." I watched him walk away towards the social worker's car. I drove down the mountain road, leaving Blackwood behind. The sun was finally breaking through the clouds, piercing the eternal gloom of the Pacific Northwest. I opened the envelope. Inside was a photo. It was a Polaroid taken a year ago. It showed 2 boys, laughing, arms around each other's shoulders. One was Elias. The other was a boy with bright eyes and a mischievous grin. Leo. On the back, in that familiar, jagged handwriting, Elias's handwriting, it said, "We saved them, Leo. Rest now." I placed the photo on the dashboard. The tremor in my hand was gone. The mystery was solved. The dead were at peace. But as I drove, I couldn't help but check the rearview mirror. Not because I was being followed, but because I knew now that the things we think are hidden in the walls, the secrets, the guilt, the memories, they never really stay there. They always find a way out. I turned on the radio. Static. Then, music. I drove on.